I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, let's talk a little bit about Greece, and specifically Schaeuble, who was the former finance minister under Angela Merkel. When Greece went through many memorandums with the European Union and many deals with the Troika, many debt deals and agreements with the Troika, the IMF, the European Union, and the group of technocrats and bureaucrats who visited Greece often to try and neoliberalize Greece, so to speak, neoliberalize the Greek economy. It's a monumental task to do, and I don't even know if it was towards the benefit of Greece. But anyway, go into Schäuble's interview with the Financial Times and what he revealed. During that time when Schäuble was the finance minister for Germany, and he was the one dealing with Greece's incredible debt and how to deal with the Greek financial crisis, Schaeuble was enemy number one in Greece. So go over what he told the Financial Times and how we look at it now. How many years removed are we, Alexander, now from this? Five, 6?
We're 4 years from the capitulation by the Tsipras government to the European Union after this extraordinary referendum that Tsipras called, in which he asked the Greek people to support him in rejecting the European Union's proposals for a bailout.
I think that was memorandum number 4?
I think it was memorandum number 4. And of course, the moment that the referendum was won, Tsipras instantly did an about turn, and he signed up to all the bailout conditions and the memorandum that the European Union had been insisting on. Now, I should
67% of the Greek, I think it was 67, voted to support Tsipras's negotiations with the EU.
Correct. Yeah. Now, as you correctly say, throughout those negotiations in 2015, Alexis Tsipras and Syriza and the Greek media and much of the liberal media around the world decided who the hero was, which is, of course, Tsipras, who was supposedly standing up for the Greek people as they were fighting this austerity that had been imposed upon them by the European Union. And they also decided who the villain was. And that villain was Wolfgang Schäuble, who was Germany's finance minister, who was consistently represented in the media as this absurd control freak. Some really ugly comments were made about him, which spoke of Greece's occupation by Germany during the Second World War, and how Schaeuble was supposedly in that kind of tradition. And I mean, he was represented to me when I went to Greece during that period as a demented European Eurocrat hardliner. And I can remember the very first occasion that you and I met, which was in the summer, shortly after the referendum and Tsipras's capitulation. We said to each other, we were walking in the woods in Moscow at the time, that in fact this was completely wrong, and that Schaeuble, far from being the villain of the piece, was the actual person who offered Greece a practical, sustainable, long-term solution to its economic problems. And what has now happened is that Schaeuble has given an interview to the Financial Times in which he has confirmed what we were saying, that he always said that Greece's economy was far too uncompetitive to be part of the euro, the eurozone, that Greece had far too many problems to be in the eurozone, that the memorandum and the demands that would be made of Greece were such as no democracy should have to bear, and that he wanted Greece to leave the eurozone in order to restore competitiveness. Now, there was confirmation of that. We knew about that at the time in 2015 because he actually went public briefly with this during a meeting on the eve of a meeting of the Eurogroup. That's the Eurozone Finance Ministers Group. But what we now learn from this interview that he's given to the Financial Times is that he had been arguing that case all along, since as far back as 2009, when the Greek debt crisis first began. And I will say this, what we've both been saying to each other during that walk in the woods 4 years ago, he was absolutely right. And how much better it would have been for the Greek people if his advice had been followed, but instead Tsipras rejected it. And the reason Tsipras rejected it was because Tsipras's loyalties, as Schaeuble makes absolutely clear, were to the European Union and to the European bureaucracy, whereas Schaeuble himself was a German patriot who had played a big role in pursuing unification for Germany, and he wanted a patriotic solution for Greece, patriotic both for Germany and for Greece. So the reality is that who was the villain and who was the hero, the truth is the exact reverse of what we were being told at the time.
And so this story is really timely because of all the news that's coming out of the UK with Brexit. And so in 2010, when the 2009, 2010, when the Greek crisis really hit, and then when Schaeuble, 4 or 5 years later, during that fourth memorandum, did offer Greece an off-ramp, he kind of structured a proper Grexit.
Yes. Yes.
Can you go into what Schäuble's plan was and why it would, looking back on it today, because I want to clarify one thing that you said, if Greece had made that deal today, the situation in Greece would have been much improved than what we're looking at now. And for our viewers, Greece is, and the Tsipras government, they're even talking about going into now a fifth memorandum for more austerity. So, you know, the can just got kicked a little further down year after year.
Exactly. What Schäuble's idea was, what his proposal was, which he made to Greek finance ministers and Greek prime ministers repeatedly, and which he also made to Merkel repeatedly, was that Greece should leave the eurozone, he said temporarily for a period of 10 years, to achieve competitiveness, because he realized he could never achieve competitiveness within the euro, and that this idea of an internal devaluation, that is to say cutting Greek living standards to make the Greek economy competitive, was simply not viable. So he wanted Greece to leave the eurozone. He wanted Greece to pursue a restructuring, a proper restructuring of its debts. That would have meant agreeing to have those debts renegotiated, with the payments properly rescheduled and some of that capital of debt written off. And last but not least, he doesn't mention this in this interview, but I know it for a fact, he offered the Greeks 50 billion euros to help tide them over the initial turbulence of quitting the eurozone. So it was all in all a generous and practical package. It would have put Greece in a far better position than the one it would have been in now. There would have been a proper devaluation. Greece would have had its debt load lifted. It would have returned activity to the economy. We would not have had this massive unemployment crisis that we have in Greece. We would not have had this desperate situation in which the Greeks were having to sell off their assets to all sorts of European carpetbaggers. And we would also have had a situation where the Greek government would have been able to run the Greek economy in Greece's interests. None of this happened because Tsipras didn't want it, because he wanted to cling on to the euro, because he was loyal to the whole idea of Greek membership of the eurozone and to the whole project, the whole European project. It didn't happen because the Europeans, the European leadership, including Merkel, did not want any country leaving the eurozone, because that would have established it not as a single currency, but as a much more flexible currency union, and other countries might have followed Greece's example. And the United States didn't want it because the United States wanted Greece remaining in the eurozone because it saw that as the way of keeping Greece in the eurozone, in the European Union, and in NATO, with a reliable pro-NATO government. So Schäuble was overruled. He came, it seems, very close to resigning, but he was talked out of it by Merkel. And as he was personally very loyal to Merkel, even though he didn't agree with her, he allowed himself to stay on, which I think was a tragedy for him also.
Yeah, and I'm glad you clarified that. Greece would have, the deal that Schäuble was offering to Greece, and just for our viewers, just to clarify for our viewers' sake as well, is not to leave the European Union, but to just leave the common currency. And it would have put Greece on the same footing as, say, a Hungary, a Romania, where you're in the European Union, but you just have your own currency. And that way your economy you're much freer to run your economy the way you need to run it. Because the euro is a very heavy and a very hard currency for an economy like Greece's.
It is like Greece trying to operate the Deutschmark. It can't be done. I mean, Greece is not an economy. It's not a strong industrial exporting economy that can manage that kind of currency. Greece's problem is that it is not a very productive economy. Far too much of the Greek economy consists of civil service jobs, which are basically recycled by whichever party is in power to keep its own clients in. It has major problems with corruption, and it runs a chronic trade deficit. What it needs is economic space in which to breathe, a proper currency adapted to its conditions, so that a proper Greek government, a truly democratic Greek government, can carry out those essential reforms within Greece, has the space to carry out those reforms, which might get Greek society finally sorted and up and running. This prison of the euro in which Greece finds itself guarantees that none of that will ever happen.
And so Tsipras, talk about, running up the civil service. Tsipras is definitely has not helped to decrease the civil service in Greece. That's for sure. He's increased it, if anything.
Well, indeed. I mean, this is the thing that makes me particularly bitter, because, of course, when he became prime minister in the run-up to the election that made him prime minister, which Syriza won in, I think it was January 2015. I mean, Tsipras promised to the Greek people that he would carry out a break with that kind of politics, that he would bring in a clean politics that did not depend on patron-client systems, that did not sort of stuff the civil service with placeholders, that actually treated the civil service as a proper instrument of government, there to carry out the wishes of a democratic government operating in the interests of society as a whole, rather than a sort of appendage to the ruling party, which is what we have in Greece. But he didn't do any of those things. On the contrary, he took a bad situation there and he made it worse. And we now have elections coming up in Greece. I think it's in October. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. And the one reliable group of voters who one can say with confidence are going to vote for Tsipras and Syriza are going to be the same civil servants and their families whom he has appointed and given jobs to. That is the Greek system, which has brought Greece to this disaster and which Tsipras is perpetuating instead of ending.
Yeah, I mean, Tsipras positioned himself as a radical left candidate who was going to bring reform and change. And at the end of the day, it took him pretty much one evening in Brussels after he got the mandate from the Greek populace to become a neoliberal integrationist.
That's exactly right. And of course, I mean, the extraordinary and very bitter thing is that, of course, the Greek people actually wanted change. Yeah. I mean, that was what that referendum was all about. So the Greek people wanted change. Schaeuble, the most powerful finance minister in Europe, wanted change in Greece and was offering Greece a solution, a statesman, a real statesman in charge of Greece with a true belief in democracy, had all the opportunities available to him to carry out that change. He would have had the support of the Greek people, as the referendum showed, and he would have had the support of the most powerful finance minister in the European Union. Tsipras threw it all away.
And Tsipras's plan over the next 4 years, which brings us to today and the elections that are coming in October, Tsipras's economic plan was to pretty much tax the hell out of everything. And that is exactly what he did.
Well, indeed. And when I go to Greece, I hear people complaining about this all the time. So, which has also, incidentally, fostered a culture of corruption. So if you go to a lawyer in Greece, you now pay him in cash, in envelopes, because the lawyer won't accept payment by bank transfer, since he doesn't want his payment on the books, because if he does, so much of it will be taken away in taxes. So again, where Tsipras promised the Greek people that he would end that kind of culture, he has, on the contrary, greatly increased it. And you hear lots and lots of people in Greece complaining about it. So Tsipras promised to end corruption. He's increased it. He promised to end, as I said, the misuse of the civil service to get jobs basically for the boys and girls, and he did the opposite. And of course, we've talked about his foreign policy, which is to do whatever the Americans and the people in Brussels tell him.
And of course, Greece was 350 billion, I believe, in debt when Tsipras took over, and I believe today they are 350 billion in debt.
Correct. There's been no advance there. The Greek economy is in reality treading water, and as you say, they're talking now about another memorandum.
Yes, they are.
So as I said, all of that has been for nothing, and that great opportunity which did exist in 2015, which Schaeuble has confirmed, was thrown away.
And of course, the Greeks sold off a lot of their assets.
Absolutely.
Just about anyone who had any kind of money to buy them, whether it was actual islands or industry or the port, like they sold it to the Chinese, anything and everything they had, they sold it in a huge fire sale.
Absolutely. A fire sale, which has resulted in no reduction in the debt at all. Exactly. so I mean, what was the point?
They sold everything and reduced the debt by zero.
Zero, exactly.
Yeah, they paid off the interest. That's
exactly.
about it. And every loan they get, when you hear that they're getting another 2 or 4 or 8 billion, is just really to keep the government running and to pay the interest on that 350.
Exactly. And of course, the demoralization in Greece that you encounter today is very, very painful to see. I mean, that perhaps is as much of a blow to Greece as everything else, because you have a very demoralized and demotivated population.
And so to bring it to today and Brexit, and to connect it to the Grexit, the possible Grexit that could have happened, to the possible Brexit that now looks like to be stalling, is that, people in the UK, you have your opportunity. Don't waste it.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the point. Otherwise, the EU really does become Hotel California. You can't leave. It may be on the house may be on fire, but there's no exit from it. There's no doors. There's no windows you can climb out of. You're stuck, and you're stuck in a situation where the EU economy is now in increasing signs of stagnation. So we see this all around us. But as I said, if you don't take the initiative, if you are not prepared to make the break, if you don't use the options which you are given, Greece was given options in 2015. Britain has options now. If you don't take those options, you will pay a terrible price.
Yeah, the EU will make you pay. That's without a doubt.
Absolutely.
All right, Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below and click on the notifications bell to get notifications every time we push out a new video. Visit the Duran shop, pick up a t-shirt, help support the Duran. In the description box down below, you will find links to our PayPal and Patreon pages. Please donate to the Duran. That really helps us out a lot. And of course, you can go to theduran.com and see all the articles that Alexander is linking up to. Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Thank you once again. Until next time, everybody, take care.